Here's proof that John is against or at the very least listening to the community when they complain about power creep. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, what is power creep exactly? Power creep is when newer stuff becomes better than the old ones in every way, which makes them useless compared to the new one. Why exactly is this bad for TDX in specific? Unlike most popular TD games on Roblox, TDX doesn't really rely on the grind to get stronger progression. Something like just adding a way to upgrade the base stats of towers. TDX opts for more of an unlocking new puzzle pieces approach, where each tower has some use despite how and when you unlock them. Like how it was back then, where you can beat Mark II with Jugg and Laser Gunner, or just set up Mine Layer to have enough DPS to kill him. Despite Mine Layer being a really cheap tower, he could kill the hardest boss at the time if used in a certain way. This style of balancing is what makes TDX more strategy focused rather than grinding focused, so it isn't just a simulator where numbers go up almost meaninglessly. This doesn't mean that the stronger towers need to be garbage. This just means that they should just be bigger pieces that need some support from smaller pieces to work. The problem with power creep is that it's what happens when the already big pieces cannibalizes the role of other pieces with no drawbacks, like with Ghost and Operator. Ghost does not need to have Operator's early game capabilities at all to be good, as it already has a large pool of utilities as well as dealing good DPS, which makes it viable for the mid game of higher end modes, and as support for the late game. All this does is basically make Operator completely useless, as it provides roughly the same value in the early game while having nothing on Ghost in terms of mid and late game capabilities. Since the last video, I've done even more testing and the results are still the same even in TB Nightmare mode, which probably has the strictest eco in the game currently. The only thing I've seen people argue that could make Operator worth using is its better CE. But as you can see in the background, Ghost is actually performing slightly better than Operator. You might say that my strategy is garbage, but if I have to keep forcing a tower to work when another can take its place easily and perform better anyway, then personally I think that's proof enough. Try it yourself if you really need more proof. Now for the Juggernaut and Combat Drone comparison. Juggernaut isn't actually a bad tower and can deal good DPS once you get it going, even though it's really hard to find a proper place to use it. But the point I was trying to make in the last video was that Combat Drone, despite being more useful and having better capabilities than Juggernaut, costs only half the placement cost. I think people are underestimating the value of its utility, since not only does it have all detections, ignore resistance, and infinite range, but it also has a damage multiplier, meaning this DPS isn't actually accurate. It deals twice the amount of damage in FPS mode and thrice if you hit weak spots, meaning it could theoretically deal 33 DPS if you aim it properly, or 22 as long as you don't miss your shots. Even if it has less DPS than Jugg, having a price this low allows it to be placed earlier and can be much more easily be invested in as you get more cash as the game goes on, while Juggernaut can only be placed later on when there's a lot more enemies and can only deal with non-stealth and non-bullet resistant enemies for quite a while. Also, as I said last video, Combat Drone really doesn't need to be viable in the early game. With this versatility is exactly why they nerfed it specifically for the event modes, and make me wonder why they won't just do that for the rest of the game. Stronger towers don't need to stick their fingers in the early game and take the role of weaker towers to be good. Just make them a worthwhile investment for mid and late game. But if you really want strong towers that are usable in the early game, give them a major drawback that makes it hard to use or be very situational in that phase of the game. This means you could still make them stronger and better, and even be required to deal with stronger threats while also leaving some space for cheaper and weaker towers to shine when dealing with lower end threats in different scenarios. I understand that this is pretty hard to achieve when they're constantly pumping out new towers. So is the life of a live service game, but I'd like to see them at least try their best. I hope that devs take this into account when balancing the Nightmare mode towers, so that we get something that is truly only in TDX. Like and sub if you want to support my channel. Not gonna lie, I'm starting to run out of issues to talk about, so I might experiment with other TDX stuff in the future. Anyways, that's all I had to say. Bye.